Hello, I'm John, the creator of Speak British English. In this video, we're going to look at some examples of the glottal stop in Emma Watson's speech. Listen to this clip.
Anyway, the imposter syndrome hit hard. Anyway, the imposter syndrome hit hard.
If you listen carefully, you'll notice that Emma uses a glottal stop to connect the word hit to the word hard. Listen again.
Anyway, the imposter syndrome hit hard.
If you look closely, you'll see that she does not lift her tongue when saying hit. The tip of her tongue is relaxed, sitting at the front of her mouth. As she transitions to the word hard, her tongue does not move. She simply changes her mouth shape. You can learn more about mouth shape and tongue position by joining the school, so follow the link in the description. Watch as I demonstrate this phrase. Notice that, just like Emma, I don't move my tongue at the end of the word hit. Hit hard. The imposter syndrome hit hard. The reason that we use a glottal stop in this phrase is that here the t consonant comes at the end of a syllable. This is completely correct pronunciation, and it's a technique you must learn if you want to sound less like a foreigner and more like a native. Here's another example.
It has felt so weird sometimes. It's got so big. It has felt so weird sometimes. It's got so big.
As you can hear, Emma uses a glottal stop to connect the word it to the word has. Listen again.
It has felt so weird sometimes. It's got so big.
If you look closely, you can see that she does not move her tongue between the two words. She simply changes her mouth shape. Now watch as I demonstrate this phrase. Notice that I do not lift my tongue between the two words. It has. It has. It has felt so weird sometimes. Here's another example.
If you have not built a home, if you have not built a home.
If you listen carefully, you'll notice that Emma uses a glottal stop to connect the word not to the word have. Listen again to how she says have. If you listen very carefully, you'll hear her glottis reopening just before the h sound.
If you have not built a home.
Now listen as I demonstrate. Not have-a. Not have-a. If you do not have-a. You may have noticed that in all of these examples, the second syllable begins with a h sound. Here's an example with a different consonant.
Got the first part I ever auditioned for. Got the first part I ever auditioned for.
If you listen very carefully, you'll notice a glottal stop between the words got and the. Listen again.
Got the first part I ever auditioned for.
If you look very closely, you'll see that Emma does not lift her tongue at the end of the word got. She only moves her tongue in order to make the th sound at the beginning of the word the. Watch again.
Got the first part I ever auditioned for.
Now watch as I demonstrate this phrase. First, I'll do it very slowly. Then I'll do it at normal speed. Got the first part I ever auditioned for. Got the first part I ever auditioned for. Here's another example.
I also got some useful critical feedback.
Here, Emma is using a glottal stop to connect the word got to the word some. Listen again.
I also got some useful critical feedback.
Just as in the previous examples, Emma does not move her tongue at the end of the word got. However, the next syllable begins with a s sound, and the tongue position for s is essentially the same as for t. For this reason, you might think you're hearing Emma make a t sound at the end of got. However, I assure you she is not. Watch as I demonstrate this phrase. First, I'll do it very slowly, then I'll do it at normal speed. I also got some useful critical feedback. I also got some useful critical feedback. As you have learned, we use a glottal stop when connecting two syllables where the first syllable ends with a t consonant. This is an essential element of connected speech, so it's a technique you must master. British people also sometimes use a glottal stop at the end of a phrase or before a pause. Here's an example.
I seem to be navigating it. I seem to be navigating it.
As you can hear, Emma uses a glottal stop at the end of the word it, even though she's not connecting to another word. Watch again and notice that she does not lift her tongue at the end.
I seem to be navigating it.
Now watch as I demonstrate. Navigating it. I seem to be navigating it. Here's another example. Listen very carefully to the end of the phrase.
I've wrestled a lot with the guilt around that. I've wrestled a lot with the guilt around that.
As you can hear, Emma uses a glottal stop at the end of the word that, even though she's not connecting to another word. Listen again.
I've wrestled a lot with the guilt around that.
Now watch as I demonstrate. Around that. I've wrestled a lot with the guilt around that. Here's another example with the word that.
Not meaningless or anything like that, but it felt like... Not meaningless or anything like that, but it felt like...
In this example, you could argue that Emma is using a glottal stop to connect the word that to the word but. However, the pause between the two words is quite long, and Emma's body language suggests a break in her stream of thought. Watch again.
Not meaningless or anything like that, but it felt like...
And now watch as I demonstrate. Not meaningless or anything like that. Not meaningless or anything like that, but. Here's an example with the word but. Listen carefully.
I'll let other people be the judge, but...
Although the word but is a conjunction, and Emma has not finished her sentence, the pause here is quite long, and if you listen carefully, you'll notice that Emma takes a breath at the end. Listen again.
I'll let other people be the judge, but...
Here's another example with the word but. Notice the raspy timbre at the end of this phrase.
Touch wood, but...
Normally, when Emma does a glottal stop, as in the previous examples, she makes a clear vowel sound and then closes her glottis quickly, which cuts off the vowel cleanly. By contrast, here Emma performs the whole vowel with her glottis partially closed. The result is that there isn't any clear vowel sound in this word. Instead, we hear a b consonant, followed by a moment of vocal fry. Listen again.
Touch wood, but...
Here's one more example of Emma using a glottal stop at the end of a phrase.
Secure, stable place in your career, or you're still figuring things out. Secure, stable place in your career, or you're still figuring things out.
As you can hear, when Emma says the word out, she does not use any t sound at the end. Instead, she cuts off the ow diphthong with a glottal stop. Notice that in this example, Emma is clearly not connecting to another word and has finished her thought. Notice also that she takes a breath at the end.
Secure, stable place in your career, or you're still figuring things out.
Now listen as I demonstrate. Out. You're still figuring things out. As I mentioned earlier, we use a glottal stop to connect two syllables where the first syllable ends with a t consonant. Note that this will always mean that the t consonant is followed by another consonant, not by a vowel. Compare the following phrases. Hot day, hot air. Hot day, hot air. As you can hear, I'm using a glottal stop for the phrase hot day, but not for the phrase hot air. Using a glottal stop for phrases like hot air, where the t consonant comes at the beginning of a syllable, is considered improper pronunciation. Listen as I demonstrate. Hot air, hot air. However, it is common for British people, including me, to break this pronunciation rule and use glottal stops before vowel sounds. Emma Watson does this a lot. Listen to how she says the word that.
That also really hit it home. That also really hit it home.
Now watch as I demonstrate this phrase. First, I'll use a glottal stop, and then I'll connect the words in the proper way. That also really hit it home. That also really hit it home. Note that in my demonstration, I spoke quickly and did not pause. By contrast, Emma is speaking slowly and lingers on the word that. If she had been speaking quickly, she probably would have connected the words in the proper way. Listen again.
That also really hit it home.
Here's another example.
There's no doubt in my mind it would have been part of my life. There's no doubt in my mind it would have been part of my life.
Here, Emma uses glottal stops between the words doubt and in, and between the words part and of. Listen again.
There's no doubt in my mind it would have been part of my life.
Unlike in the previous example, here Emma is speaking quickly and does not pause. Listen as I demonstrate this phrase. First, I'll say it the same way as Emma. Then I'll say it using the proper connections. There's no doubt in my mind it would have been part of my life. There's no doubt in my mind it would have been part of my life. The glottal stops here are not very noticeable, due to the fact that they occur before unstressed words. Contrast this with the next example, in which the glottal stop occurs before a stressed word.
Yeah. What I've learnt, who I've read. Yeah. What I've learnt, who I've read.
As you can hear, the glottal stop between what and I've is quite noticeable. Let me demonstrate this phrase. I'll say it once like Emma said it, and once with the proper connections. What I've learnt. What I've learnt. Using a glottal stop here, as Emma did, sounds quite rough and should not be imitated. Nevertheless, in Emma's case, I think it sounds okay because overall her pronunciation sounds so elegant and refined. Remember, native English speakers sometimes adjust their pronunciation according to the environment. No doubt if Emma were speaking with her grandmother or were giving a formal speech, she would be more restrained in her use of glottal stops. In this interview, however, she's speaking with a peer in a relaxed setting. Here's a similar example.
That are intended to be nothing other than cruel. That are intended to be nothing other than cruel.
Again, here the glottal stop is quite noticeable because the word are is stressed in this sentence. Listen as I demonstrate. That are intended. That are intended. That are intended. That are intended. Here's one final example of Emma using a glottal stop before a vowel sound.
That's a lot of anxiety to live with. That's a lot of anxiety to live with.
As you can hear, Emma repeats herself. This is called a false start, and it's a normal part of everyday speech.
That's a lot of anxiety to live with.
If you listen carefully, you'll notice that the first time she says that's a lot of, she connects lot to of using a glottal stop. But when she repeats herself, she connects the words in the proper way. Listen again.
That's a lot of anxiety to live with.
Now listen as I demonstrate. That's a lot of. That's a lot of. That's a lot of anxiety. That's a lot of anxiety. In all the previous examples, the glottal stop occurred in a word where a t consonant follows a vowel. Here's an example where the t consonant follows another consonant.
I call them duvet days, where I'm just like, can't. I call them duvet days, where I'm just like, can't.
Notice that Emma does not make a t sound at the end of the word can't. Instead, she cuts off the n sound with a glottal stop. Listen again.
I call them duvet days, where I'm just like, can't.
Here's another example where she does the same thing.
It just feels empty otherwise, I can't. It just feels empty otherwise, I can't.
Here's a similar example with the word felt.
It felt so...
Contrast this with the following clip.
Suddenly it felt...
Here, Emma is making a clear t sound. Listen again to both clips.
It felt so... Suddenly it felt...
Here's one last example. Listen to how Emma says the word didn't.
I didn't sleep last night either. I didn't sleep last night either.
And now listen as I demonstrate the words can't, felt and didn't. Can't, felt, didn't. Can't, felt, didn't. He can't do it. I felt bad. They didn't know. He can't do it. I felt bad. They didn't know. I hope you found this video helpful. If you're serious about improving your pronunciation, follow the link in the description to Speak British English Academy. As a member, you'll have access to a suite of courses covering all aspects of British pronunciation, and you'll be able to join weekly live classes. I look forward to helping you with your accent.